Today is the feast of Saint Andrew Dung Lac and companions, Vietnamese martyrs. And in today's gospel reading, notice how our Lord speaks about the temple, how beautifully it's adorned with beautiful stones and gifts, jewelry dedicated to God. And then our Lord goes on to say that the days will come when not one stone will be left upon another. All will be thrown down, all will be taken down. And we see in other passages in the scriptures that our Lord makes the same prediction. But when we look at today's gospel reading, as our Lord goes on, the people ask him, when is this about to take place? When will this happen? And then he starts talking about the end of the world. So he says, nation will rise against nation. There will be earthquakes, famines, plagues, dreadful portents, great signs in heaven, some claiming to be who he is, not to go after them. So he makes a connection between the destruction of the temple in Jerusalem and the end of the world, or the destruction of the world, we could say. And the reason the two are connected is because the temple represented the created world. It represented the beauty and the order of the creation that God had established. When we stray from the ways of God, we destroy that beauty. We destroy the harmony, the goodness that exists in all of nature. So we see mankind polluting the earth and causing all kinds of problems, all kinds of conflicts, not just in relation to nature, certain animals becoming extinct, but also within mankind itself, greater and greater conflicts. So, the question we might ask is, why did the Romans destroy the temple in Jerusalem to such an extent that they didn't leave one stone upon another? And the reason is not just because our Lord had predicted it or foretold it. So in other words, it's not just something that God wanted, but they understood that for the Jewish people, the temple was almost everything. The temple meant so much to them. It was the place where God was. It was a reminder to them of the presence of God with them. It was the place where they received so many of the blessings from God. So the Romans knew that if they could destroy the temple, in many ways they would be destroying or weakening the faith of the Jewish people, and it would make it easier for them to conquer them because of that. So they did destroy the temple in the year 70, and they completely destroyed the temple, and not one stone was left upon another. They took the stones away. They took it to various places and used them in building other buildings. So it's no longer existing. But in regards to the end times, so in many ways, near the end times, there will be great tribulations, great trials, but the world as we know it will be destroyed. And this is symbolized by the temple. But the other thing that our Lord didn't really emphasize here, but it's kind of implied, is that near the end times, the faith of believers will be destroyed. In other words, certain people want to remove the faith that the people have. So there are people who are opposed to Christianity. There are people who are opposed to Christ. And Satan is certainly opposed to Christianity and opposed to Christ. So they want to destroy the things that we depend upon. So they want to destroy the Catholic churches. I wouldn't be surprised if at some point the Vatican gets blown up, or churches get vandalized. And we see this happening even in recent times, a lot of the protests in the US, but all around the world, in France especially, Catholic churches are being attacked. And yes, it might be other religious groups that are doing that. It's not always atheists. But it is true that people are kind of moving towards a society in which God is absent. And that's how people want it. So they want a new kind of system, a new world order, we could say. And so you've probably heard in the news about the Great Reset. It was on the cover of Time magazine, I think. So there's a lot of evidence for that. They want to kind of have a system or a society where everyone is controlled. And in many ways, this pandemic is a good opportunity for them to be able to do that, because now they can monitor everyone. They can set up systems to monitor everybody. Even with the vaccine, they're going to monitor. If you don't get the vaccine, you can't travel. You can't do this. You might not even be able to buy anything if you don't get the vaccine. So it's kind of like we're being forced to comply to a kind of certain rule that we may not necessarily like. And yes, there may be greater persecution of faithful Christians, of faithful believers. And we see in certain places in the world, even today, where atheism has become the dominant political position and kind of the rule of the land. So there are many places, including Vietnam. I mentioned, the Vietnamese martyrs today, and I did want to talk about them a little bit. But take, for example, China. Or North Korea. So these are places where it's a very communist type system, and there is one ruler who kind of rules, and he rules as a tyrant, or they rule as tyrants, and Christians are very severely persecuted. So what is communism all about? Well, in theory, communism sounds very good because it basically promotes the equality of all men, and that you should share the resources with everyone. So it sounds very beautiful. And basically this is what socialism is all about, that you just share everything. The government just gives hands out to everyone. But there's all kinds of problems with that, because, if somebody works harder than someone else, they're entitled to receive more. If somebody is a doctor, they should get paid more than somebody who, is just a grocery clerk. It makes sense, right? So, in a fair system, what is really fair is giving people what is really their due. But the problem with these communist societies is that communism it's atheistic materialism. So you just believe in the material world, and you seek material goods for your satisfaction. You don't believe in an afterlife. You don't believe in God. And if you have this viewpoint, then it makes perfect sense that, mankind is overpopulating the earth, and we got to preserve the earth. Therefore, we are going to control our populations by eradicating them. And some people say maybe the virus was introduced to eradicate some of the population. But we certainly see in places like China where you have to get permission in order to get pregnant. You have to get permission from the government. And in recent times, they've allowed it to go from one child, so most families could only have one child. Now you can have two children, but of course you need to have permission. And if you get pregnant without permission, the woman is forced to have an abortion against her own will. And sometimes when the children are born, the authorities will take the child and drown the child, or, because they didn't have permission to have the child. So in an atheistic kind of system, horrible, horrible things happen. And this is the direction the world is headed in near the end time. So yes, there will be earthquakes and famines and plagues and portents and signs from heaven. The miracle of the sun in Fatima, we could say it's a sign from heaven. There may be others to come, that is true. But one of the signs is the spread of immorality in society. It's a sign that we are straying from the ways of God. And as I mentioned, there are people that want to take away the things that we believe in to make it harder for us to practice our faith. And in relation to all of this, I wanted to say that these things that are to come near the end times, there are many foreshadowings of it. So destruction of the temple in Jerusalem was a foreshadowing of the end. And the Jewish people, Jerusalem, was attacked by the Romans. So they had to defend themselves. So in other words, there will be wars. So these are precursors or foreshadowings of what is to come in the future. So some people have pointed out, well, we experienced all these things, plagues and dreadful portents and earthquakes in every age almost. That's true. But near the end times, there will be more. And, in recent times, terrible storms in the Philippines, even here in North America, down south, and, the polar ice caps melting and the rising of the waves and causing more disturbances. So we could say there are many terrible things happening, but in one sense, every age experiences terrible things, and it's important that we are aware of this. So in regards to today's martyrs, St. Andrew Dumlac, who was a priest, and his companions who were martyrs, I wanted to read what is written in the breviary regarding them. So the beginning of the 16th century saw the first sowing of the gospel of Christ among the Vietnamese people. And this seed grew through the blood of martyrs and the spiritual joy of the newly baptized faithful. During the 17th, 18th, and 19th centuries, particularly during the reign of Emperor Min Mang, 1820 to 1840, many Christians received the martyr's crown. These included bishops, priests, men religious and women religious, and members of the laity. All of these suffered torments of various kinds for their Christian faith and fidelity to the cross of Christ, and bore witness to Christ's church and true religion. Some were decapitated, others hanged, others burned or whipped to death. Others died during their imprisonment. Of these, the Supreme Pontiff John Paul II on the 19th of June, 1988, declared 117 martyrs to be among the ranks of the saints. So I read this to emphasize the persecution that they experienced. And the point I'm trying to make is we need to be like them. We need to be ready to face persecution, whatever may come. We need to be willing to lay down our lives for our faith. I wanted to continue by reading, it's in the breviary, from a letter of St. Paul Le Bao Tin sent to students of the seminary of Qui Vi in 1843. I apologize for my pronunciation, and I'm just going to read a part of his letter. I, Paul, in chains for the name of Christ, wish to relate to you the trials besetting me daily, in order that you may be inflamed with love for God and join with me in his praises, for his mercy is forever. The prison here is a true image of everlasting hell. To cruel tortures of every kind, shackles, iron chains, manacles, are added hatred, vengeance, calumnies, obscene speech, quarrels, evil acts, swearing, curses, as well as anguish and grief. But the God who once freed the 3 children from the fiery furnace is with me always. He has delivered me from these tribulations and made them sweet, for his mercy is forever. In the midst of these torments, which usually terrify others, I am, by the grace of God, full of joy and gladness, because I am not alone. Christ is with me. Our Master bears the whole weight of the cross, leaving me only the tiniest last bit. He is not a mere onlooker in my struggle, but a contestant and the victor and champion in the whole battle. Therefore upon his head is placed the crown of victory, and his members also share in his glory. How am I to bear with the spectacle as each day I see emperors, mandarins, and their retinue blaspheming your holy name, O Lord, who are enthroned above the cherubim and seraphim? Behold, the pagans have trodden your cross underfoot. Where is your glory? As I see all this, I would, in the ardent love I have for you, prefer to be torn limb from limb and to die as a witness to your love. The letter, of course, goes on, but because he was so close to God, his sufferings were not that difficult to bear. And this is a very important message to all of us, because we are all suffering. We are suffering because of the pandemic. We all have ailments of one sort or another. Some people are suffering from, cancer and other things. But when we are close to God, when we have great faith, the faith like these martyrs had, then Christ is with us and he shares in our suffering. He takes a lot of our sufferings upon himself so that he can help us through the difficulties that we face. So no matter what the future holds, we should never lose hope. We should never lose faith. We too should be willing to witness by our lives, even to the shedding of our blood.